Hi everyone, welcome back to another week on the Brush by Brandy YouTube channel. We're going to be doing a tutorial this week, and this week's project is going to be these pieces that are sitting behind me. It's actually a fairly complex decoupage project. I don't always take these on, but these are for a special customer of mine, and so she wanted cherubs, and so I ordered a paper from Society 6, which is one of my favorite sources for papers. They've got tons of variety. You can get just about any design that you want on a paper. They're nice thick papers to work with. They apply really well, so I highly recommend it. It's their gift wrapping paper that I'm going to use. And we found this design and I showed it to her and she approved of it, and we actually made these really cute nightstands out of them. So I'm going to do kind of a cloud finish using some Wysal paint, mixing those colors together. I'm going to show you how to paint in decoupage paper when it's not exactly the right size for your furniture piece, how to camouflage some of those seams. But overall, these came out really cute. We're going to make some molds out of resin. We're going to use some gilding waxes, a really pretty paint finish. I think you guys are going to like these a lot. There's a lot of interesting pieces to them to see. So you guys, if you like these little cherubs behind me, stick around and check this video out and see how we got here. Let's get started. Here's where I started on this French provincial set of nightstands. My customer chose inspiration from a set of cherubs, and so I ordered this print on society6.com. The tops of these pieces had quite a few nicks and scratches in them, so I needed to sand them down. This clear coat came off pretty easily, and I was able to just take it back to the raw wood to get it perfectly smooth. I gave my customer the option of leaving these as wood tops, but she preferred to keep them painted to match the body of our piece. So because I knew that these needed to go back to a painted finish, I sanded them with an 80 and then a 120 and a 220 grit. I gave them a coat of shellac to keep the raw wood from bleeding through my paint finish, and then these were ready to be painted again. With my tops all smooth, I needed to go ahead and clean the bodies. I removed all of my hardware, and then I sprayed my pieces down using TSP, which is trisodium phosphate, a hardware store cleaner. You always want to make sure you wipe your pieces down with water afterwards to remove any cleaning residue. The rags on these pieces wiped back pretty dirty. You can see all the stains. This told me that these were going to be bleeders and I needed to prime them. So my next step was to coat them using Wysal primer, and this is their light gray color. The primer is going to keep the oils in that wood from bleeding through into my painted finish and discoloring it over time. This primer applies just like a paint. It is water-based, so it's nice and easy cleanup. Even though I plan to use a paper decoupage finish on these pieces, you want to be aware that paper is porous and so it can also bleed. So even on your decoupage finishes, you can still need to prime underneath. I take all my drawers out and prime around those as well. While I have all my drawers out, I'm going to go ahead and label the bottoms with the numbers so that I know what order they go back in place. Here are my pieces all nice and primed. I'm ready to start laying on my final finishes. I love ordering papers from Society 6. They're always a really nice quality. This is their wrapping paper, so you can go on their website and you can search wrapping paper in any number of designs. They literally have thousands of them. I had searched up a variety of cherub designs. I sent the examples to my customer, and these were the ones that she chose. Each order from Society 6 comes in 5 sheets, so I actually got 5 pieces of each of these images. This is a fairly thick paper, so I'm going to apply it using a wallpaper paste. This is Roman brand 543 wallpaper paste. I pick it up at my local Lowe's store. I'm decoupaging with thicker papers. I also make sure that I back butter the paper, and that just means that I brush the wallpaper paste onto my furniture piece, and I also brush it onto the back of my paper. When you get this paper wet, it starts to soften and it actually starts to stretch a little bit. So when I'm applying it, I'm going to make sure that I work with it very carefully. I don't want to tear the paper, and I want to stretch it to conform to the curves of this furniture piece. Now these are quite a challenge to apply this paper to. Doing this finish is much easier when you have a flat fronted piece. It was hard to get it into the curves of the French provincial style, but then I also had a lip around the edges of these drawers that I needed to conform it to. Once I have my paper in place, I cut away the excess, and then I'm using this blue decoupage tool. This is from Grace on Design, and I'm going to use it to smooth over the surface of my decoupage and seat that wallpaper paste into each other. I clean off any excess wallpaper paste from the edges. I try to keep that from getting onto the front of my paper. Now that I've got the lower apron of the body done, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the drawers. I'm not going to sand away the excess from the apron until it's dry. If I try to sand away the excess on this paper while it's still wet, it's going to have a tendency to tear. I'm going to repeat the same process that I used on the body by back buttering my paper and then applying some of my wallpaper adhesive to the front of my drawer. For the placement on this paper, I started by matching it up to the lower apron on the body, and then I worked my way up to the drawers. Now I'm going to tell you right now that I made an error in laying this paper, and I didn't calculate for where the face of the piece would lie on the body. And so I'm going to have to correct this later, but you guys can watch as I go through laying this paper. What it means is that the eyes of my cherub ended up landing right in between two drawer seams, and I was hoping I could pull it off and get away with it, but it ended up needing to be corrected. So I'm going to let you see me going through this first attempt, but I am going to have to correct it later. Once my paper is attached to my drawer front, I came around with a pair of scissors and I just cut anywhere that I needed the paper to flex so that it did not tear. And then I'm able to just use my fingers and work this paper around the rim of the drawer. I do this very carefully. It's almost like I'm applying a wrap to the front of the drawer. I'm asking this paper to stretch and flex, and thankfully this is a pretty durable one. It took it pretty well. You'll notice I do have some of my primer still exposed around the edge of my paper. This portion of the drawer is going to need to be painted in to match my paper. This can be a tedious process and we'll do this later. So I always prefer when I can cover as much as possible in the paper, but on this one I just can't get it to wrap all the way around those drawer edges. I've got this first drawer done. Let's go ahead and finish up the rest of our drawers and then I'll stop and show you where the error was on this. With my paper all done, I need to start getting some paint onto the rest of the body of this piece. I chose this random color just because I wanted it to kind of match the background on the paper. Now my customer did want a blue background and these had a kind of an amber background, so I'm actually going to paint in the background of this paper. This color is called Dijon by Wiesel Paint, and it was the closest background color that I had to the paper. This way I start with an even base that matches all the way across my piece, so when I start painting it in, it'll look like it's a seamless finish. I applied this paint using a swirling motion and a natural bristle brush because I do want a light texture to this. I plan on adding a sort of cloudy finish, and the texture is going to add to the realism of the clouds. So here they are, you guys. Do you see the mistake? That second cherub, his eyes fall right into the drawer seam. So you can kind of see why once I realized the error, I knew that I couldn't leave it like this. All right, everyone, let's talk about mistakes. I don't always show all the mistakes that I make on these videos, but I make plenty of them. And I learn from all those mistakes, probably more than I learned from doing it right the first time. So what did I do wrong on this piece? Well, I laid my paper and I really liked it. It went on really nice and smooth, except that I started at the bottom on this piece, and where it ended up cutting off my cherub's face, his eyes landed right in the middle of the intersection of the drawers. And let me show you guys exactly what I mean. This is the frame. There is an eye right here in between my drawers. So obviously, ideally, I would want the full face to be on the center of the drawer, and it didn't land there. So I should have paid attention to that in the first place, and I didn't. The good thing is here, I have another piece of paper, and I've already taken some of my paper off one drawer, and it's coming off really easily. So I had attached this. Thankfully, I had not sealed this at all with a sealant. I sprayed it with some water, and then I just took a 5-in-1 tool with a scraper blade, and when the paper is wet, it softens that wallpaper adhesive and comes off really easily. Now, once I seal this with a clear coat, it would not come off this easily. So I'm glad that I have the advantage that I had not sealed these yet when I decided to go ahead and redo it. I kept trying to think whether I could leave it and get away with it, or does this need to come off, but I just was never going to be happy with it. So I'm going to scrape the rest of my paper, and then I'll need to sand some of this little bit of paper that's going to stay behind here, but with a little bit of sanding, and then I'm just going to lay my paper again. So lesson learned on decoupage, pay attention to where your full image is going to line up. On this one, I started at the bottom, and as I worked my way up to the top, just where his eyes fell was right in between those two drawers. That's a lesson I learned on this one. Let's get it all fixed up. I'm going to get this paper taken off and get it started again. Thankfully, when you order from Society 6, every design comes with 5 sheets of your paper. So I actually have 5 of these. I can still mess up 4 more times after this. So here's my piece with all of that paper removed. Thankfully, it came off pretty easy. I was kind of dreading this process. Sometimes you can have to sand it off. This one, just a little bit of water, and I was able to scrape it away because it was still unsealed. So what am I going to do to correct it? I'm going to move my paper up. Instead of aligning it with the bottom apron of my body, I'm going to align it with the bottom of the first drawer. The way that this lines up has the eyes of my cherub going across the center of the second drawer. So I'm going to repeat all the processes that I did the first time, back buttering my paper with some wallpaper paste, putting some wallpaper onto the body of my piece. Anywhere that I need my paper to flex, I just cut slits into it, and then I'm slowly just going to wrap the paper around all of my drawer sides using my fingers. This blue tool is a huge asset for decoupage. I used to use a brayer and it worked really well, but I find this acts like a squeegee, and I'm able to push out any of the excess wallpaper paste to the edges of my drawer, and then I just wipe that away. It gets a nice, clean, even seating of the paper onto the piece. They match up really well. I don't know that I'll ever be able to do decoupage again without using that blue tool. Anywhere that I need to rub it, I try to reduce any friction. This is wet paper. It can have a tendency to tear, so I use a soft cloth or the blue tool anywhere that I need to rub the paper. Try to avoid pulling at it. Once you tear the paper, it's really hard to fix it. So I continued through this process again and wrapped all 3 of my drawers over again. It did take a little bit of time, but honestly, this was a fix that had to happen. I'm glad that I did it. I did let this paper dry overnight. Once it's wet, you really kind of want to leave it alone because it does have that high tendency to tear. So I'm going to wait till it's dry to come back, and I'll sand away all the edges nice and smooth, and then I'm going to go ahead and add my paint finish. So for this paint finish, I'm going to mimic the look of clouds, and that's because I want to carry this onto the background of these cherubs so it looks like they're floating in the clouds. I'm using a variety of Wiesel paint in blues and grays. I will list them all in the description for this post. I'm going to use a natural bristle brush, and I'm just going to start swirling the colors into each other. I find that the most realistic clouds come from building up layers, so I'm going to build some contrast. I started with some darker colors over the top. I'm going to layer some light. The swirling motion lets those undercolors kind of peek through a little bit, so you get those light and dark spots just like you would in a natural cloud setting. Let's go ahead and finish up these clouds by swirling in my paint colors, using my darker colors under bottom and a little bit lighter tones over top for that contrast and layers. So during this process, I told you guys that I would need to paint in around the edges of the drawers. While I was doing this, I also came back with the coordinating paint colors and I painted in along the edge of all of my decoupage. It was really tedious making those colors match up, but I was able to do it. Here are my cherubs with the backgrounds all painted in and the face of my second cherub all fixed. It looks much better. With the sides of my pieces painted in this cloud finish, I decided that I wanted to add a little gold cherub in a mold that would go in the center of each of the sides. I'm going to mix equal parts A and B of my amazing casting resin. I stir it for about 30 seconds and then I'm going to pour it into this Redesign with Prima silicone mold. Anytime you're working with casting resin, it does cure in about 10 minutes, so you only have a few minutes to work with. You want to make sure you get it into your mold fairly quickly while it's still liquid. I'm using a silicone mixing cup, and that way I can just flex the cup into a spout and pour it right into my mold. Then I use a sharp tool to just feed it into any areas on my mold that might not have gotten any resin in them. Once the mold is full, I'm going to walk away and let these start curing. When they start turning white, that means my resin is coming together. I kind of like watching this process on fast motion. You can see the resin turning white. Once they're completely white, they're ready to remove from the mold. I removed these from the mold and spray painted them in a gold spray paint. I'm also going to use a little bit of Redesign with Prima decor wax. This color is called Eternal, and I'm just going to outline some of the details on my French provincial pieces. Then using a little bit of Titebond Quick and Thick adhesive, I'm going to find center on the sides of my piece and I'm going to attach these gold cherubs. They do look regal, like they're floating in the clouds. They were a nice accent just for the sides of the piece. I love that they tie in with the overall cherub theme too. I used a little bit of blue painter's tape and lightly applied it just to hold my cherubs in place while my glue dries. I actually really like the patina on this hardware. It's got some pretty colors in it, and I want to keep this dark color. I know if I clean these up, they're going to clean up to be this kind of bright gold, and I don't really want them super bright. So I actually want to just clean these to remove the finger grease, but I'm not going to take all the patina off. So I'm just going to soak these in a dish of warm water and some Dawn dish soap. Just get them nice and clean and then leave that nice patina on the metal, and we'll use a little gilding wax to brighten it up. I left my hardware to soak for a little bit and then I came back and cleaned it up, and once it was dry, I'm ready to go on to my next step. I'm going to apply a little bit of my Redesign with Prima decor wax in Eternal also to the front of my hardware. Once this dries in 24 hours, it's pretty durable, but you do have the option of sealing it in a coat of spray lacquer if you like. I left the patina color on my hardware and I like the way that the gold accents just pop through against the patina. Finishing a piece never ends at just the outside. I also need to take care of the inside of my piece as well. So this one had some stains inside the drawer, and so I went ahead and sanded those away. And I'm going to use a little bit of Wiesel Furniture Salve and their salve brush. This is their lemon verbena scent, which I love. And I'm going to just use this and moisturize that old wood. And it's going to bring that color right back. This conditions the wood. It leaves a nice scent to my piece. These are those finishing touches that make a piece truly complete. I will do this to the inside of my drawer box, and then I will pull it out, and I'm also going to do my drawer sides and glides as well. I like this shot right here because you can start to see inside the piece where all of the painting in was done. I do also paint in around the drawer edges of the frame as well. Once my glides were all oiled, I was ready to go ahead and seal up my pieces. I sprayed these in 2 coats of satin clear coat, and these ones are complete. I staged these using some simple gold frames to tie into the gold on my pieces and a blue vase to tie in with the cloud finish. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. You can find links for everything I used in the description for this post, including a full materials list with all of the colors that I used for painting in around the edges of these cherubs. As always, you can find more Brush by Brandy on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, a weekly tutorial on YouTube, and on my website at brushbybrandy.com.